welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I am W.D. Foster Graham, the book review editor for Insight News, and I will be your host on this Book Chat Thursday. Now, Conversation with Al McFarlane also features stimulating, inspiring, encouraging, and amazing content from all aspects of the African and African American diaspora. Now, we are on our way to 2,000 subscribers. So if you are enjoying our content, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, and your network. Let's say we appreciate it and continuing to provide such content for our viewers. Today, we have a special guest author for our Book Chat Thursday, and his name is Aaron Foley. Aaron is a Brooklyn-based journalist and an author. He's originally from Detroit, and he has published 3 books about his hometown, including his latest novel, Boys Come First. By day, he's an editor, and he has worked at several news outlets, including the PBS NewsHour and the New York Amsterdam News. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Aaron Foley.
Hey, WD.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's good to have you here on the show. So now the bio says you're originally from Detroit. Tell us about how you grew up.
How did I grow up in Detroit?
Yes.
It's an interesting thing to kind of be alive right now. Because I was born in 1984 when the Tigers won the World Series. I lived through the Detroit Pistons winning the national championships. I have lived through the Detroit Red Wings winning the Stanley Cup twice.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Lions continue to perform as well as they are right now and go on to the Super Bowl and win, then that means all 4 of our professional teams will have accomplished something in my lifetime. So it's a great time to be a Detroiter. But just aside from the sports history, I just had to plug the Lions. Go Lions! But
of course.
Growing up in Detroit it's an unmatched experience as a Black person, as a Black Midwesterner, as a Black American. I grew up in a city that was predominantly Black, which meant you saw Black people at every class level. You go into a business, a Black person is the janitor, a Black person is the secretary, a Black person is the CEO, a Black person is the assistant manager, and that's just the way it was. There was no judgment or whatever because everybody had a job, everybody's working, right? But over time, Detroit has seen an influx of a lot of non-Black residents, and that's not a bad thing per se, but it has sort of altered how people sort of move around the space because, again, kind of growing up in a predominantly Black city, I always tell people you don't know you're Black until you leave Detroit, and other folks kind of tell you are, right? And we meet that in many different ways, but to kind of be confronted with some of that in your own city sometimes has made for an interesting experience for Detroiters as of late. So I've tried to capture some of that in the journalism I've done, the books I've written, a lot of the things I do. I live in New York now, but I have Detroit in my heart. I'm actually going to be there next week for a project. And so, but I not only that, but I just love being from just a internationally known city. We're known not just for Motown, but we're known for cars. We're known for our innovations that Detroiters, even some to this day, have continued to put into the world, and you see our DNA everywhere is what I like to tell people. So it's great.
Hey.
Go on, Dave.
So tell us, well, growing up, who were your mentors? Who were your role models? Who were the people that inspired you to your career?
I would have to say first and foremost my mom. My mom was a journalist in the Black press. She worked at the Michigan Chronicle for a number of years, and she, gave me my first typewriter, an actual typewriter, not official price thing or anything like that. Like, it was a hand-me-down that she wrote her college essays and whatnot on. And she just gave that to me to keep busy, and I learned how to put the paper inside, 8.5 by 11 every time, putting the paper in and doing the little rotary thing. And to keep me busy as a child, I would write. I just was trying to imitate her, trying to mock what she was doing, mimic what she was doing. Sorry. And I started writing little short stories, little fairy tales, and things like that. And I just knew very early on, I was just like, this is something I like doing, and something buzzer, New York life, right?
Yes.
But that's just something I learned to do at an early age. Another big role model for me, my grandparents on both sides, my dad's parents, my mom's parents. My mother's father was an entrepreneur in Detroit, the first Black man to graduate with a nursing degree, a master's in nursing degree from State University College in Detroit. My dad's father, one of the few Black people integrating the auto plant he worked in at the time. And then going on to become a very respected detective on the local police force. My grandmothers, taking care of their families, my mom's mom being a seamstress, a fashion designer, all of these types of things. I just take inspiration from a lot of folks, especially family. So,
Hey, well, I guess we have something in that in common, because as an author myself, my my mentor was my father. It's basically, he may not have typed, but he did what your mother did, because he was such a great reader. And oftentimes, if you're going to be a great writer, you have to be a great reader to start with. So that being said, I say, tell us about your book.
So, boys come first. I just happen to have a copy here.
Of course, that's what we do.
Plug it, right? You got to plug it. Boys Come First is a novel that just grew out of life experience, grew out of my own, like, wanting to read something that kind of reflected where me, my friend circles and whatnot, folks I've known forever, have experienced. And it's about Black gay men in their 30s in Detroit, just trying to have it all. And what does having it all mean? Having a good job, having a good partner, having a good family life, having nice clothes, all of these things, some material, some emotional, what have you, and the obstacles that Black people face trying to achieve these things, gay people trying to achieve these things. But what happens when you put the two together? I was reading, obviously there are a lot of Black gay authors who have blessed us with, countless works over the years, everything from James Baldwin to Elin Harris. Some folks that have also come out very recently. I'm thinking like Rashid Newson and David Santos Donaldson. All of these folks who have come out with work recently, but I was looking for something that kind of reflected the Detroit experience in terms of kind of what I had touched on earlier, in terms of some of the gentrification that's going on in Detroit right now. Some of what someone my age, and the character's age in the book, they knew a Detroit that was one way for a very, very long time. And then, like, almost overnight it's changed. And so one of the main characters in the book has lived away from Detroit for a while. And he comes back and he's just like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that are different. There's so many white people around here, and I never seen white people like in Detroit in my life, and things like that. But also just kind of like, not just the observational things about Detroit, but just some of the interior relationships of Black gay men, in terms of like trying to love another Black gay man, trying to maintain a relationship with another Black gay man. I always tell people that I was sort of inspired by when we talk about role models and stuff like that. I've never met her personally, although I've interviewed her
Right.
in my past work. But I was going for that Terry McMillan vibe in terms.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was a child and Waiting to Exhale, the book came out and then the movie. But my mother's generation. My mother was a single parent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she and all her single Black female friends carried that book around like the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and when the book came out, I mean, sorry, when the film came out, and then the soundtrack or accompanying it, like that was them seeing themselves. That was them having their story. But all of those single women that had kids, right? All of those single women that had gay kids, right? I told me and my best friend, one of my best friends, we both grew up with single moms in that time period. And then we both got to the Waiting to Exhale age. We both got to our early 30s. And we were having a conversation, having some drinks, some wine or something like that. And I was just like, you know what? The same stuff that our parents went through in terms of these men that won't commit, these bosses that treat us like crap at our jobs, these constant struggles with dating and everything else, all the same stuff that our moms went through when they were in their 30s. Now we're dealing with the same thing, and the only thing that's changed is the gender, right? And so I was like,
Hey.
I'm going to write a book about this, and I did. So I was trying to go for a lot of the voice and texture and style that Terry did in Waiting to Exhale, in terms of like, there's 4 women there, there's 3 men here, but they're all of them are dealing with just like the all different levels of relationships and all of that type of thing, and their friendship maintains throughout. So
Wow. Well, that would definitely be an inspiration here, because usually when I think about the Black LGBTQ scene, you think about DC, Atlanta, Houston, those places, but not Detroit.
And people should be talking about Detroit more, because when we think about just Black cities in general, whenever, whether sexuality or identity comes into it or not,
Mhm.
people are very quick to say like New York, where I am now, and Harlem, and Bed-Stuy, and of
Mhm.
course DC, Chocolate City, Atlanta,
Mhm.
Black gay capital. But it's just,
Right.
I wanted to kind of remind people and kind of put it out there. It's just like Detroit not only has a lot of Black gay people, but it is the blackest city per capita in the United States, the largest Black city per capita in
Mhm.
the United States. And also just kind of, again, reminding you all throughout the book, uh, they're just, it follows the story of these 3 fictional characters, but
Mhm.
they are listening to Aretha Franklin. They are
Yeah.
listening to Anita Baker. Today, it would have been Aaliyah's 46th birthday. This is the AAA to me: Aretha, Anita, Aaliyah, all of these
Mhm.
like influential singers that came out of Detroit. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I can go all day with Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson and Temptations and so on and so forth. Big Sean, all of the rappers that are coming out nowadays.
Yeah.
And that's just our music, right? And so there's a film, One of These Days, with Keke Palmer and SZA. The director of the film, Lawrence Lamont, a Detroit native.
Yeah.
We Black people from Detroit, gay, straight, bi, trans, whatever, are all over the place, and I wanted people to understand that.
Hey, it's all about sharing our stories, because as my executive director for Minnesota Black Authors Expo, and we agreed that if we don't, somebody else will, and that may not be accurate.
Yeah,
So it's,
absolutely.
so now, as tell us some more about you as an editor, since that's part of you.
As an editor, I have reached the age and stage of my career where I spent, sort of like the first decade or so of my career as a reporter, as a writer, but then advancing into the management, and now sort of the mentoring stage, right? And so I think it's part of my role right now, in terms of like I've been an editor at a couple of different publications. I've been a mentor to a number of younger journalists, which seems very weird to say, because I'm just like, oh, I was the younger journalist not that long ago. But No, I try to do my part to do two things. One, amplify and bring to light some of these stories that are underrepresented and undercovered in the media, in our publications. I actually, I moved from, at one stage in my career, I moved from one news outlet to a different publication because I was just frustrated because I was an editor at this outlet, but it was very difficult to push stories through that meant something to Black communities, to queer communities, and whatnot. And so I moved to another publication where I had a little bit more freedom. But all along the way, regardless, as an editor, I want to bring some of these underrepresented stories to light. But also, the second part of that is just boosting the younger journalists that are coming up. It is very difficult to navigate the journalism industry as from a marginalized identity, be that sexuality, identity, or being a person of color. And I have swam with the sharks. I've been through a lot, and I just try to extend a hand back to folks who are looking for that same kind of guidance. And so on paper, an editor just kind of fixes mistakes and helps it flow and all of that. But I take to heart the more holistic parts of being an editor. So
Okay, that kind of segues into my next question about that, or say, tell us about how you see the role of the Black press or the Black media, especially now in 2025.
well, as we are getting, T minus 4 days
Mhm.
until we head into a new administration, it's going to be more crucial than ever for the Black press to make sure that our stories don't get lost. I've always taken to heart the role of a journalist is not just to report information, but to document history. And no one is better at documenting a community's history than a member of that community. And that's something that the Black press has done for more than a century. And so it is something that is important. It is vital. It is relevant. But it's also the reality is a lot of Black press, and I know this from my experience having worked in it, having worked with the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism here in New York as part of the Black Media Initiative. It is something that the journalism industry as at large is sometimes struggles to stay afloat in terms of funding and things like that, and finding revenue sources and adapting to all of the ever-changing trends and whatnot. But Black press also very much is underfunded, and sometimes is systematically underfunded by the powers that be, in my opinion, and what I've seen firsthand. But also just in general, trying to remind people that the Black press exists and it's here to serve you. And this is a resource, a vital resource that can help you understand not just yourself, but the community around you. I think of how, for example, in Minneapolis, the one thing everyone learned, one of the lessons that was taken away from George Floyd there was how the Black press had documented for years the tense relationship between Black Minnesotans and the police squad there. And then it was such a surprise, right, for folks outside of Minnesota, like, oh no, like how could this happen in Minnesota?
Mhm.
I know for a fact that y'all in Minneapolis, like, well, this is nothing new, right? But
Mhm.
the Black press has been there to let you know that this is nothing new. So that's why I have a heart for the Black press and realizing its value and significance.
Yeah. And that being said, what can our viewers out here do to continue to support and lift up the Black press and the Black media? Since so Black press came into being during the 19th century, and that was a way to let people know what was going on in different parts of the country, so far as African Americans, especially in the South. Um, but now we have, in addition to the press, we have social media, we have live stream, we have TV networks, etc. So as viewers, and of course, books. So what can our viewers do to continue to support and uplift the Black press?
I mean, subscribe, follow, consume. If there's a newsletter, open it and read it.
Mhm,
If there's story, we every lots of publications have folks that track all these audience metrics and things like that, and things
mhm,
like a little metric that I always go by is
mhm,
just how much time did they spend on the website?
mhm,
How much time did they spend on this page? Right? You know, um, the best thing a reader or a viewer can do is just consume the media as much as they can and financially support it if they're able
mhm,
to.
mhm,
But I wouldn't shy away from also, like, readers and viewers should develop a sort of, relationship with reporters and editors in the Black press.
mhm,
That can mean just like, hey, like, I've got a business opening. It's a Black owned business. It's a Black woman owned
mhm,
business. It's a Black queer owned business. I would like some coverage, or, I
mhm,
just want to let you know. Or there's this issue going on where it seems like, oh, this particular community is being overlooked in favor of this one,
mhm,
or something like that.
mhm,
Reporters love tips. We love, journalists love getting tips in their inbox in terms of like, I want to bring this story to life, but I think there's something to be said about like building that symbiotic relationship
mhm,
between the staff at the news outlet and
mhm.
and the readers themselves, and it can go both ways.
Well, I can agree with that because that's shown up since I got started. Uh, you know, ready, reviewing books and stuff, and also I get tips about different events that are going on, and as a community newspaper, we think we've learned that, yeah, this is the place that lets you know, okay, this is who we are, this is what's going on. We celebrate as well, and also if there's some serious issues, it's done in a way that is respectful and with dignity, but still stays truth to power. Now, since you do have the book, I will be asking you about sharing a couple of excerpts in a little bit. Um,
Are
I
you gonna
asked,
pick which one?
yeah, well, you could get to pick one. But now, while you're picking one, um, tell me about your areas of expertise.
My areas of expertise. Um, I I think the through line through everything I've done, my background and foundation is in straight by the books journalism, news reporting, news editing. I have covered the automotive industry. I've covered K-12 education.
Mhm,
But then I started moving, into like writing essays and writing commentary and writing
mhm,
opinion. And then I did one book, nonfiction. And then I put together an anthology,
mhm,
nonfiction. And then I wrote a novel because I've been trying to write a novel since I was 7 years old,
mhm.
writing those little short stories.
Yes, yes.
So, but the through line has always just been like uplifting and amplifying the folks that are overlooked. A lot of my journalism has been about Detroiters and just making sure that their voices are heard and stories are being told, because for a long time, especially during some of the bankrupt, the city of Detroit filed the largest municipal bankruptcy in 2013.
Mhm,
And around that time, before and after, like let's say from around like 2008 to 2009, when the huge economic crash was affecting all the United States, but especially from like around like '08 to 2016, the largest voices in Detroit, the reporters telling the story, the faces and all the news coverage were white, right? There were a lot of white
mhm,
people telling the story of a majority Black city. And that annoyed not just me, but thousands of Black people in Detroit who are just like, well, when am I going to be heard? You're not telling the whole story. You're only telling half
mhm,
of it, and things like that. And so, my expertise is just trying to do that. But even when it came to the book, this book is far from like, the let's say the doom and gloom and negativity
mhm.
that most people
Sure.
get with it.
Uh-huh.
These boys are having some fun in the book.
Yes.
But but one of my
Uh,
but one of my expertise is I think this sort of learned new muscle that I have is, just kind of observing how Black gay men specifically how we operate compared to our straight peers, compared to our white peers, compared to our queer brothers of color that are not black. We move differently, we talk differently, we dress differently. In Detroit specifically, the girls are wearing fur coats and Cartier frames that someone in Atlanta may not necessarily a gay man in Atlanta may not necessarily own a fur coat because they're in Atlanta and they're in the South and the temperatures don't drop to that level. But in Detroit, we put on our fur coats, and so I wanted to kind of exemplify how different, how same and how different the similarities and differences between Black gay Detroit culture and just Black gay culture, period. I was involved with someone who uh, liked to read as much as I am, liked to write as much as I am, although he's not as prolific as a writer as I am, although he tried to be. But but he would always recommend to me a lot of novels and books with white gay protagonists. And I would be reading these sad stories about these sad white gay boys like going through life. And I'd be like, well, when am I going to read a book with a Black gay protagonist? And his response to that was just go watch Moonlight. And I was like, you know what? I am going to do my own thing. That involvement ended. But no, I was just empowered to sort of. There was a Toni Morrison quote. If there's a if there's a book you read, you have to write it, and so that was what I did.
Well, guess what? That's one of the mottos for the same quote. And I just also had a quote to share with you. One of my inspiring quotes came from none other than the queen herself, Aretha. And she says, be your own artist and always be confident in what you're doing.
I haven't heard that one before.
Oh,
I just go straight to the lyrics of the song. So
yeah, but that's one of her quotes. So do you have an excerpt we can share at this time?
Well, are we PG 13 or can we, how where on the scale are we in terms of like what language is allowed, what language isn't allowed?
Well, let's see. It's more like on the PG-13.
Okay. I will censor accordingly. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least just say you're just giving a little disclaimer that for some there might be some sensitive material here, but yeah, I think sort of like the PG-13.
So the context of this is one of the main characters has just broken up with his long-term partner. And during the time that he was with his partner, it was a monogamous relationship, but this monogamous relationship developed during the time when the dating apps like Grindr and Scruff and Jacked started to take off. And so he has in Tinder and Hinge and all of that, in eHarmony. I'm just naming all names at this point, but he has no familiarity with any of the dating apps because he hasn't had to be on them. And so now he's forced to use them because since he's broken up, now he's looking for a partner. He's trying to get married before he turns 35 and he needs to hurry up and do it. But he's kind of like scratching the bottom of the barrel and just kind of in his feelings about it. And he's also just kind of gone on some bad dates. So, so I'll start with this. I'll start there. So I'll start with this paragraph. Sorry. The profile photos scroll by in waves, and Dominic. Name the character is Dominic. The profile photo scrolled by in waves, and Dominic couldn't help but think of the strange way that as he stared at the screen in the dark, looking through this tiny window at all the little people inside who were hungry to screw. Those same people were also looking back at him. That forced him to wonder who he really was or was trying to be. Upon first signing up, these apps felt like surveys prior to a doctor's appointment. Both Scruff and Griner wanted to know what kind of body Dominic had, how much it weighed, and how much hair was on it. Dominic had never really thought much about his exact weight. He kept in shape, no abs, but no belly either. Perfectly acceptable for a 30-something gay man who ate healthy most of the time, held a mandatory for a Manhattan Gay Equinox membership, and jogged regularly in Central Park. Tinder didn't ask for his height or weight, but Dominic saw that its gay male users put them in their bios anyway. Before he uploaded any pictures, he had stripped down to his underwear and looked at himself in the full body mirror in the bedroom. How do I describe this body? I'm hairy, but am I very hairy? Am I athletic or a jock? I have arm muscle definition, but no visual abs. My pecs poke out a little. Average? You can see them when I wear a tight enough shirt, I guess. Am I tall? What's my shoe size? 12? That's pretty average. But 13 would indicate something else. A bigger endowment, maybe. Some of my 12s are pretty tight on my feet, but sometimes 13s are too big. Should I lie and say 13? And then Chrisette Michelle's Love Is You came on iTunes Shuffle. Dominic snapped out of his scrolling reverie. Delete this song, he mumbled to himself, half drunk, immediately clearing the song from his library. It reminded him of Justin. It was one of the potential songs Dominic had imagined playing at their wedding, a black celebration of nuptials that was now never going to happen. As a matter of fact, Dominic thought, let's just delete all the wedding songs off this playlist. He went to his playlist titled Me and Him, which he'd put together to possibly play during their ceremony, the first dance, and the big family blah on the dance floor. Miriam Makeba's A Promise, deleted. Anita Baker's Love You to the Letter, wiped away. Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell's Your Precious Love, Lil Mo and Fabulous's Forever, gone. Because even after all of this, there was still no clear playbook for young black gay men coming up in this world. There was no hip hop and R&B soundtrack of back-to-back bangers to be their chorus, no Gabrielle Union subplot, or Tay Diggs line to sum it all up. T.D. Jakes and Steve Harvey hadn't written a relationship book for them. Iyanla couldn't fix their lives. All they got was barely 2 seasons of Noah's Ark and Moonlight. Any other lessons were in heteronormativity.
Whoa. Talk about navigating the dating pool in these day and time. It's a whole different animal. I would just say to you, Aaron, what was funny for me was the Dominic's crash and burns
Yeah.
when he was going on that dating app.
Oh, it can mess you up mentally. Spending too much time on the apps, and I've seen people crash out. I've seen people crash out after just being like, I can't take it.
Mm-hmm. And when I was reading the book and stuff, there's a remark that black gay men and dating other black gay men was harder than somebody who's non-black. Can you elaborate on that?
I think it's because with black gay men, we have some very firm in Detroit, especially. There's another character who's just very focused on, uh, let's say, like monogamy, I guess, in terms of like just having just like one partner and all of that. And I think a lot of that is drawn from Detroit being a very religious city. We always say there's just as many churches as there are liquor stores. And so when you kind of grow up and see a lot of black weddings in churches and see a lot of like, finding your soulmate, all of that is sort of drilled into us, whether you're queer or not. I think a lot of black gay men tend to fall into that, whereas sometimes with non-black gay men, but especially white guys, there's more of a feeling of like, multiple partners, polyamory, all those sorts of things. Not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but I think with black gay men, we tend to take things like cheating and infidelity like personally and a lot more seriously, because that's we're told that like looking at all these like movies and pop culture and things like that, cheating is the worst thing you can ever do in a relationship and all those types of things. I think also there's something to be said about the relationship between just black people black gay people and white supremacy and capitalism and whatnot. You see one of the characters kind of struggling with like, how can I own my place as a black person in the world when I got white people telling me to act this kind of way, and I got black people telling me to act this kind of way, and I still got to make this money, but not all money is good money, and all these types of things. And when all of those like external forces start to weigh in on your personal dealings and your personal relationship, and you got one black person saying like, you're a sellout, you're doing this, you're not black enough, and then you got another black person saying like, I'm black in all these spaces, but I have to code switch, I have to do this, and all of the friction that comes with that. I wrote a couple of paragraphs and passages about the idea that black gay men, like, they have to present as masculine because they're afraid of looking too feminine, and the world already tells black boys you always have to present a certain kind of way. But within our own community as black people, it's just like, oh, being too feminine, you'll get called a sissy, you'll get called all these types of names. But on the other hand, still, if you're too masculine, then the police will, look at you as a threat if you get out of line, and all these types of things. All of these like, twists and turns and external and internal conflict, and you're just trying to live. That's why I think it can be a lot more difficult to love each other sometimes, because you got other people trying to tell you how to be, right? And you can't even be yourself half the time.
So yeah, so it all starts with how we love ourselves.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And sometimes what a lot of the readers have told me over time, what some of what I was pouring into in terms of my experiences with folks. But some of the characters in the book, they have those times where they don't feel like they love themselves either, and I feel like a lot of black gay men go through that at some point, because it's just like, sometimes we try to pray away the gay, and pray we don't, just hide certain parts of ourselves. And why are we hiding certain parts of ourselves if we're supposed to love ourselves? Well, we have to, just to kind of make it through, right? Black people in general, we just got to make it. We just got to make it, right? Just make it to the other side. And so, like, all black people carry this load, but what happens when you're black and gay? You have to carry almost twice the load. And you always got to do twice as much as the white folks, right? It's so much. It's so. Just stop me, because I'm gonna.
Hey, well, a lot of that's true. But then again, we do have a lot of persons who are living in their truth, and they are thriving by living in their authentic truth as persons who are black and LGBTQ.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And my greatest salute, my greatest respect to them. I think it's a journey to get there.
Mhm.
Right? It's definitely a journey to get there. These characters are in their 30s when the world is telling them, it's like, if you're not making X amount of money a year, if you don't have this degree, if you don't have this, if you don't check all these boxes, then you're a scrub, right? You're this, you're that. I'm the generation that came up with, I don't want no scrubs. I want best friends, best friends riding path beside his best friends riding, stuff like that. Like we try to run away from that label and that particular thing so bad, but not knowing that black people, we do tend to get half as much, and it's such an uphill climb to kind of achieve all these material and consumer markers. And so and where does being gay fit into that? Where does being queer fit into that? Where does being black fit into that? Where does top fit into that? Where does being a bottom fit into that? We're just going through that as well. And so it's once you get through that hazy dark phase, this very I don't say it's a dark phase, but it's a very confusing phase that these characters are in, then they can finally learn to love themselves fully, wholly, completely, which is what I hope that I took these characters on their own journey towards. Then they can become the superpower, the Superman that they were always destined to be.
No, that is so true and so true. So now, how can, in terms of the media, all right, Black press, and especially including LGBTQ media, how can we engage those generations behind us?
I think just just understanding there's complexities and
Mhm.
nuance. As a gay millennial, I still kind of have to, I recognize I recognize two things. The one thing I have great and deep respect for is the generation before me, the
Mhm.
generation that survived the 1980s HIV/AIDS epidemic, the generation before me that were in fear had were in fear of coming out, in fear of living their true lives, and the desperate measures they had to go through and whatnot, recognizing that, but also just kind of recognizing that millennials are kind of in between, right? In between, it's like, I think our generation is kind of half of us uh have the privilege and the good fortune of having accepting families and accepting parents and stuff like that, but I do know some folks my age that are estranged from their parents, and so realizing that we're not all the same,
Mhm.
realizing that there has been some evolution in that regard when it comes to our generation and whatnot. Uh, but also realizing that there are nuances. I might have a good, just saying, for example, somebody may have a good relationship with one side of their family, but not the other, and things like that. Also just recognizing that, like, there's always this consistent, persistent debate around, like, should a black queer person date another black queer person to advance the race and stuff like that, or are you a sellout because you're dating a non-black partner and things like that.
Mhm.
Just recognizing that, I personally don't care, and I think more people would do better to recognize that, like, you shouldn't necessarily judge someone by their personal choices, by their partner and whatnot. But also, I look at the Gen Z queer
Mhm.
generation, and I'm not saying all of them, but I think because they are a little bit more far removed from, I grew up with AIDS PSAs on
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
and stuff. So yeah, I remember I was there, I was alive watching the press conference when Magic Johnson
Right.
admitted he had HIV, and I remember Arthur Ashe dying from HIV, and I remember people saying, "Was Magic Johnson gay? Is Arthur Ashe gay?" and stuff like that, and they weren't. But I having lived through the tail end
Mhm.
of everything that developed in the 1980s, and having
Mhm.
that spill over and all of the stereotypes that come from that, a lot of the Gen Z queer generation, they have prep now, and so it's very easy and accessible to get, but it also kind of creates this dissonance between,
Mm.
like, as I was coming of age and I was coming into my own adulthood, prep was not a thing, but
Mm.
very real threat of contracting the virus was. And so I still live with a lot of that fear and stuff like that, and very fully cognizant of, like, protection and how to protect yourself and stuff like that. And also living with the recognition that just because someone does carry the virus does not mean that they are a leper or anything like that, right? But I look at these young kids growing up today and having no concept of having that mentality whatsoever. That's when I turn into uncle, right? And I'm just like, you kids, you all need to know.
Yes,
there's,
yes.
there's a reason why millennials kind of think this way, and then folks younger than millennials think a different way. And it's just because, like, I still kind of live with a lot of, my mentality was formed by things that happened way before some of these kids were even born, right? And so,
Right.
just sort of listening to, like, where folks are in the conversation. I have one small pet peeve, and that's when it comes to, like, listening and understanding, and where the black press can kind of play a role in this. I think I'm gonna try to talk through it, but our understanding, divas, right? Singers, pop singers, R&B singers, and they have always held a place, not just in black culture, not just in pop culture at large, but especially, gay men, we hold our girls close to us.
Mhm.
Whitney, Aretha, Diana, and things like that.
Mhm.
But in Janet and so on and so forth, I think there's a distance between generations in terms of like I was there for Whitney, I was there for Janet, but a lot of the younger generations are trying to form their opinions and where the always trying to like compare and contrast where these women were in their careers based on like Wikipedia, based on like YouTube videos and things like that. They're sharing
Mhm.
videos of things I watched live.
Yeah, yeah.
That, and coming to all these conclusions where it's just like there's this one like theory running all over TikTok that the actress Teresa Graves, who played Get Christy Love back in the 70s, because she looked so much like Whitney, right? There's this theory, it's just like this is Whitney Houston's real mother, and it's just like I like my generation and older, it's just like we know who Whitney Houston's mother is. It's Sissy Houston. Like we know.
Mhm.
It was no question about it. And so like I want folks to understand that it's just like the relationship to our beloved singers, like let's go back to the old school of how we just engage with them from a fan of a singer level and not necessarily like a stan and an encyclopedic trying to hyper explain like why this is, how come this artist in sells many records. It's like nobody was paying attention to that. So
Nope. It was the artistry is all about it.
yes,
That's
let's
what
get
it
back
is.
to the artistry and not necessarily the sales and all of that. So
Indeed. Now, so do you have another excerpt you can share with
do I have
our
another next?
viewers? Yes, please.
Let's see. I see if I can go back to the breakup thing. Okay, so this character, this character set up a vacation, let's say, with a dude that he was hoping to get this person to commit while he was on vacation. But then he goes through his phone and discovers that this person has this person that he's in love with and was trying to convince him to convert into a boyfriend has a whole different boyfriend on the other side of the world, across the ocean. And so he comes to this realization in the hotel room as the one guy's taking a shower and they're all getting ready to do what they do. And then he's just like, oh my gosh, I've been the side chick. I've
Mm,
been this the whole time. And so I'll read from that and sort of kind of what he goes through in the middle of this.
gotcha.
Um, and now here I am, all the way out on the West Coast, looking stupid. It feels like I'm halfway across the damn globe, but I'm just 4 hours from home. Home. Everyone loves me at home in Detroit, but I can't get the one person that I thought mattered most to me and who I thought I mattered the most to love me back. A superstar working my butt off, and I'm just a toy he can cast aside. I'm a Looney Tune now, looking in the mirror and fading into the shape of a lollipop with sucker written across the middle.
Mm,
While rolling still in the shower, I pack as fast as I can, get into the rental car, and drive to a Costco parking lot where I cry my eyes out for an hour. My phone's going off. Yes, it's him, but I don't answer. Through my tears and a spotty cell signal, I look for flights from LAX to Detroit, trying to figure out how soon I can get out of this place. I ended up paying almost $1,000 for a last minute flight on Delta. You'd think I'd be smarter than this, but the truth is, I let this happen, and I can only blame myself. I wanted to believe my heart, but the heart's got no logical reasoning or critical analysis. That's what your brain is for. And I haven't been using my brain. My heart doesn't have common sense, and neither do any of these men. They don't even have just plain old sense. I feel foolish. Finding that out cost me the plane ticket and the Airbnb, but at least I'm finding it out, right? Big baller, nothing to a boss. I could have kept this money and put it literally anywhere else other than the promise, the expectation of a good roll in the hay and some palm trees, because that's all this really was going to boil down to. Just a roll in the hay in all these different cities with no end goal. At the end of this thing, this whatever it is, I'm walking away with nothing. Roland can do whatever the heck he wants to do. All I have is an empty heart and a dusty brain. Is he even remembering the most important things I told him? When he said, "You're fine, babe, don't worry about your weight," or "I like your body just the way it is." Did he really care, or was he just saying that? I never wanted to think twice about any of this, but here I am. I had told him everything about me. And looking back, I barely know anything about him except the basics. I realize that now. Dominic was right, and I can't even talk to Troy about this. And now I have to tell people this story for the rest of my life that Mr. Detroit got played by some charming douchebag on Scrub. I'm too old for this. And you think it would hurt less at this age because you think once you get here and you've been through some stuff, you can take it. I can't. Why did I think I get any sort of commitment out of this? Why do these men think that they can just string you along instead of just manning up and say what they really want? That's the thing about this gay business. It's not like, oh, men are trash to these women and women keep playing these games with these men. With two men, it's a staring contest where no one blinks. We're just expected to read each other's minds and build something, whatever, from there. Black gay men have to look out for themselves, but it gets lonely. Nothing is more heartwarming than a we. Every day is walking a tightrope, and instead of holding up on one of those long poles, I've got weights dragging down both of my arms. This blackness, this gayness, my ambition, my love, my loyalty, my responsibility, my respectability, my skepticism because of my circumstances, and my optimism that things might change. And I'm walking this road with nothing and no one to catch me if I fall. We all are until we finally reach a path where we're no longer alone. But it looks like my rope is reaching all the way from Detroit to Palm Springs, and I'm tired. This is where I fall.
Ouch. Oh, you reading that? I immediately thought about Brenda Holloway. She was part of Motown Singers, and she had this song called "Every Little Bit Hurts,"
Yes.
and that just was so clear. Finding out that way. So that which character was that?
That's Remy.
That's
Remy is the three characters. I'll just go quick. Remy is this flashy, like I had an image of my mind of like all the flashy Detroit boys I see that are always in a mink coat, a mink jacket. Not sometimes we drag the ground, sometimes we sweep the ground with the minks, but someone that's always just like dressed to the nines. Cartier frames. He's a real estate agent, and he's just like, I'm getting money. I've got power. I've got status, but I'm missing a man. I don't have. And he's trapped between two dudes that like refuse to commit, and it's just like, how many of us have been there? Where it's just like, I got two bums over here.
Yeah.
And then he's got two best friends. Dominic is the one I was talking about a little bit earlier. He grew up in Detroit and then moved out when he was in college and moved to New York and was high up in the advertising world. And then he gets dumped by his boyfriend that he finds out is cheating on him also, and loses his job in the same day. And then he has nothing left to go for except to move back to Detroit. And then the third friend is Troy. Troy is half black, half Asian. And so he's navigating just that identity alone. But he's also kind of the more sensitive one of the group. He's the one that's like the environmentalist. He's thinking about like all of these like conscious choices and things like that. And part of his struggle, not only with his job, because his job is at risk based on some forces enacted by actually one of his friends closest to him, but also he's kind of stuck with this boyfriend that is a little too black, a little too, when I say that, a little too pro-black in terms of like willing to sacrifice his queerness in order to live in his blackness. And so I'll let y'all read it for more.
So now where can our viewers purchase your book?
People can purchase the book online through Amazon. Type in "Boys Come First," and if you or your local Barnes and Noble could possibly have it. You have to check by store location. If I apologize, I did not do my research, but there's like a Black-owned bookstore in Minneapolis,
Strive Publishing.
I would check with them, and if they don't have it, tell whoever that owner is, like they can reach out to me and get it. Or on Audible. The audio version is exclusively on Audible, and it's narrated by a friend of mine, Jelani Aladdin. He is a Black queer actor on the rise. He did a number of Broadway productions and now is moving into TV. And he was in the critically acclaimed series on Showtime, Fellow Travelers, which is also a TV series based off of a queer novel. And so either the audiobook or the print version, just pretty easy to find on a lot of online outlets and also in person or local libraries. I always tell people, check the libraries too. I'm in the library, so.
Okay, I heard that. And just to say, for those in the Twin Cities area, go and check out Stride Publishing right at the corner of 901 Nicollet Mall. If you want to purchase Aaron's book. Now, you have just about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to give you a question I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give to your 13-year-old self coming from now?
Oh, 13. Oh, you picked a horrible age. So in 1997, what was I doing? I would tell my 13-year-old self to hold on to every hobby you have. I played a lot of video games when I was at that age, and I was told, and I read a lot of comic books. And when I started high school that following year, I stopped playing video games. I stopped reading comic books because everyone's like, "Oh, that's what nerds do. That's what geeks do, right?" And so, like, I did not want to be a nerd. I did not want to be a geek, and I was called that name all throughout like elementary and middle school, and I was just like, you know what, this is childish. I'm not going to do that. And so I miss doing that. I miss video games and comic books. And there are so many people my age who are into video games and comic books and are still doing it. And that's a relief and a source of joy and pleasure for them. And so I would tell my 13-year-old self to like be your full self that age and stop listening to what other folks have to say.
Hey, there you go. It's all part of being true to who you are. So I thank you so much, Aaron, for being a guest today, and thank you for sharing your story, and also, hey, readers, yeah, you heard it here, and thank you for giving us a taste of Detroit, and as one who has relatives, including my dad, who came from Detroit, hey, I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me, WD. It's so appreciated.
Okay. So this is WD Foster Graham, your co-host today for Conversation with Al McFarlane, and we'll see you on the next go round.